Thank you for the invitation. My task is very complicated because the previous speakers have already made a picture of all the migration problem. And so I am obliged to choose some specific issue, and I have chosen to analyze especially the political aspects of that, how countries react, because Jeffrey has depicted the two aspects of philosophical debate and the political debate. I shall go only on the second aspect of that, let's say the political debate, because this is my experience and my skills. Clearly, the migration problem has so many aspects that we have to make some deep choice. I was stricken by the fact that if you analyze the 6 U.S. Nobel Prize of 2015, all 6 were immigrants, and 40% of MIT staff, and they are immigrants, so there is also these aspects of, and this is the reason why you hinted to the choice that countries do on this aspect, But clearly, taking the political aspect of that, I want to stress, first of all, the problems of immigrants because of war. This is clearly now a Middle East, European problem. And I stress this aspect because the immigrants by war, without any possibility of choice, without any, they feed fear. And so all the numbers you have correctly given on what the countries, when the countries react, 15%, they are totally changed by the fact that the new immigration is without any control and without, the war is changing the aspect of immigration in Europe, And as you, people who is not familiar with what happened, we had 2 big flows of immigrants, one from Syria, Syria and let's say deep Asia, and the other one African from Libya. First one to Balkans and Germany, second one to Italy, and nobody knows where. And is incredible the fact that there was a political agreement to stop the Syrian flow through an agreement with the European Union driven by Germany, and the flow stopped. But which is the consequence? They are all in camps because the war is going on, and they are all in camps in a horrible humanitarian condition. And so the political reaction of the host countries, has made, clearly made more manageable in the political aspect in Europe, but has made even worse the problem of refugees. And in theory, this is a short-term problem. In real terms, this is an incredible long-term problem because the war and the instability of the Middle East is is going on, and nobody knows when it will stop. And the refugees are accumulating in Turkey. Turkey is keeping them because receiving money, and this is the strange compromise that Europe has done. The other case, the other flow, the Libyan, is the only one, and because of war, is the origin on an horrible number of casualties. Even yesterday, hundreds of people. We don't, today, coming here, I don't know how many died yesterday. And because this is a daily problem, there is no news in our media. Simply remind a boat was, and the war has completely changed the aspect of this migration. When I was Prime Minister of Italy, Gaddafi was used to menace me, telling, look, I will send you boats of people. But he never did, because there was some sort of agreement in which we could heavily, but we could manage the problem. Now, the war has created groups of interest that live on migrants. This is a new problem that is incredibly important from the economic and financial point of view, because the migrants pay all the fortune, they sell all the goods in order to escape. And, clearly we have two unforeseen consequences. First of all, this flow of money is heavily conditioning the policy of Libya in this case, but it was the same in Turkey in the past. But in Libya is dominating from many aspects the political life of the country. And so it makes even more difficult the negotiation for peace, because interfere with interest to have migrants passing through. And nobody knows how long this is going, because the international community does not put this as a priority. So remember that the Libyan war is going on for a longer period of time than the Second World War already now, And from within the policy of the receiving country in this case, is not any more the number of refugees, is the political consequence in the internal political situation of the country. So you have the reaction, terrible reaction in countries like Poland or Hungary that have virtually no immigrants, that are still countries of net immigration. But this is used, as Jeffrey pointed, as a problem of national identity, and this national identity with the fear is raised with a lower, even lower level of immigrants. And we have, it's not absurd, but there were more immigrants to Europe before 2007 than now. But the political reaction is totally different because of the fear of the war and because of the lack of a common policy. Second observation, in this situation, it becomes almost impossible to have a shared international political action. That is absolutely necessary, as Jeffrey pointed, but it is politically almost impossible because the new political movements, they grow mainly, but on two pillars, unemployment and immigrations, you know. And so it's the internal political situation has become totally different than before. Even if, as it was hinted before, and we can go deeper into the problem, the demographic aspect is incredible. You have four big European countries and many smaller countries, but you have Poland, Germany, Italy, Spain, well, all the continental big countries except France that are in a demographic disaster. You have 1.29 children per woman, and if you add the immigrants, you have 1.39 children per woman. So the decrease of population in Germany, Italy, Poland will be some dozen of million from here to the 2060 to one or two generations, you know. And also because the demographic behavior of immigrants, it's different for 5, 6 years, then it becomes the same behavior as, let's say, the national population. So the increase of birth given by immigrants is a short-term aspect of the population. In this picture, it was impossible to change radically the Dublin agreements. Each country is left in its own situation. Clearly, Italy in this period is suffering more than any other European countries, but could happen for any other country because there is no solidarity. And I tell you, I am very pessimist that for the time, for the forecast that we can have, the policy, in my opinion, will not change. And the demographic aspect, I tell you only one figure. The median age in Italy and in the other countries is around 46 years, and in sub-Saharan countries is 17. When we have this difference, it's, there is nothing else to tell you. This will go on and on till I don't know when, you know. Jeffrey has made long-term forecast in demography. Maybe sometimes there are changes, but forecasts of today are absolutely incredible, you know. And so we have really made sermons. I did so many sermons for the necessity of a common European policy to develop Africa. Maybe in the future, you know, but till now, even my experience is that there is no European continental policy. There is a flow of aid to Africa, but not a common policy. And even when I was president of the European Commission, it was a very unique case. But when there was a problem in French-speaking countries, the responsibility of organizing the European policy was given to France, the same for some British. And so you had a split policy. And the only continental policy is Chinese, but with completely different goals, and don't mention any possibility of one immigrant, or even now in the future. So you have this asymmetry that the policy is done by countries that are totally excluded from this flow, and the countries in which the flow is coming, they have no common policy. So there is a total political inconsistency in this case, and the sensibility, it's, as I hinted before, has totally changed, and the reaction starts not when there is 15% immigration, but when there is 0.15% central immigration, you know. So this is an incredible change. And so the international, because of this incredible political situation, I think that our action, if we want to have a concrete result, our action must be really focused on investments in Africa, economic development, common action in order to give an order to the immigration, because otherwise our people will be racist, and there is no way to stop this defensive mentality, as you, Geoffrey, have called it. And so you see that the war makes things worse, but the basic point is the economic aspect of immigration. And our legal office have tried so many times to distinguish refugees, a perfect, legitimate distinction. But, you know, I found myself, how can you judge a family left from the Iraqi tragedy and that has been 5 years in a refugee camp, and then they have nothing to eat, and then they are refugees because of war, or refugees because of hunger. It's more and more absolutely an impossible distinction. And so to be brief and to end this picture, clearly we must make an action on the receiving country, but politically all the politicians will be in some way obliged, under brackets, to change it, as it happened in Germany. You have to remember that the generous approach of the German Chancellor has been obliged to change, because otherwise the Chancellor would have changed it. And this is the guideline, the compass of all the European countries in this period. And so I am unable to deepen the environmental aspects, because I do think that they are absolutely unpredictable. You have a year of drought in Ethiopia, and then a year of flood. The year later, there is absolutely, we understand simply that the problem is become deeper and deeper and more difficult to solve, but without any possibility to define this aspect. So I am absolutely unable to touch it, except to say that will dominate our future. But this is not the migration policy that must tackle it, but the environmental policy. And all of us understand that this aspect has made a step back in the last years, and also a totally reversal point of view in which you have the Chinese obsessed by the Chinese government, obsessed by the environment problems, and the American government that seems to be absolutely in the reverse position. So let us examine, let us keep the problem on the table, but with no possibility of any scientific or political forecast, because the changes have been so deep in the past year that I don't know which will be the orientation in the future. Sorry for this pessimistic picture, but this is, let's say, the consequence of my long personal experience and of the political atmosphere that I do feel for the future. If there is an agreement, will be more oriented to keep migration under control than to open the door. This is the reality. Sorry to be so blunt, but I think it's not my fault. Thank you.